Hi, and welcome back to this Thursday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation with us. I want to chat with you for this next segment, along with a special guest in our studio here, about a column that Kirsten Powers wrote that was published yesterday in USA Today. Now, you and I have talked about this frequently in this listening audience, about the danger to religious liberty posed by the homosexual agenda. One specific example being a baker in Oregon who politely declined to bake a cake for a gay couple that wanted to celebrate their gay wedding. Now, they've gotten married in Massachusetts or someplace because gay marriage is illegal in Oregon. Now, he politely declined. He'd done business with them before. He'd produced baked goods for them before, so he had no problem doing business with homosexuals. But he said, look, my Christian convictions will not allow me to produce a cake for your celebration because my Christian convictions teach me that that's a counterfeit marriage. I'm not going to be able to support that. Well, they found somebody else to bake the cake, no problem, but they filed a complaint with the government of Oregon, and the government of Oregon found against them and have found them to be in violation of the state's discrimination laws, and they're in danger now of a fine or of even going to jail. Now, Andy Stanley was interviewed by Kirsten Powers, who wrote this column in USA Today about this issue, and here is what Andy Stanley said about this matter. He said that it is offensive to him that Christians would try to pass legislation that would protect the rights of these bakers. He said it was offensive. That was his word. It was offensive. He said serving people we don't see eye to eye with is the essence of Christianity. Jesus died for a world with which he didn't see eye to eye. If a bakery doesn't want to sell its products to a gay couple, it's their business, literally. But listen to this, but leave Jesus out of it. So he says, if you don't want to sell a cake to a gay couple, go ahead and don't do it. But whatever you do, don't bring Jesus into that discussion or into that debate. And here with me to talk about the significance of this is Tim Wildmon. Tim is the president of the American Family Association. Tim, welcome to Focal Point.
Brian, good to be with you.
Well, Tim, give me, we've chatted about it in the hall over the last couple of days. Give me your reaction to this column, and particularly what Andy Stanley's had to say here.
Of course, this is her story. Is it Kirsten or Kirsten? Kirsten. Anyway, her story is about Kansas primarily. Mm-hmm. And you've got an excellent column up on One News Now right now about this whole situation, what you and I are discussing now. But in Kansas, they are considering a law which would basically protect Christian business owners from exactly what you described. In other words, I don't think they need a law. Personally, I think the Constitution of the United States protects them.
First Amendment pretty well covers it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But the legislators in Kansas are trying to do something in addition. And so they're trying to protect Kansans who don't want to, or Christians, or other religions for that matter, who don't want to, as a matter of violating their convictions, participate in a, quote, gay or lesbian wedding. So that's what the whole story was about. And then she got a comment from Andy Stanley, as you mentioned, who's a pastor in Atlanta and the son of the well-known First Baptist teacher, Charles Stanley. And I was shocked, I guess you could say, by Andy Stanley's comments, because he sided with those who would force Christian business owners to participate in, quote, same-sex or homosexual marriages, end quote. I say that because I don't believe it's a legitimate marriage, so I want to make sure we separate legitimate from illegitimate. And so I had to read that 2 or 3 times. You and I talked about it, some others I talked about it, and I don't know why a Christian leader would say such a thing. It doesn't make any sense, because what he's advocating, as you rightly point out in your column on this on onenewsnow.com, his logic. And I understand, if you want to say that Christians, we should be cordial to everyone, or we should reach out with the gospel to everyone, or in the case of these businesses that have been fined, they had no problem selling cupcakes or taking pictures of people who happen to be homosexual. That wasn't the issue. The issue is, are you going to force by law a Christian to go take pictures at a gay wedding, or go be the bakery service for a homosexual wedding, and that's just wrong, and it's constitutionally wrong, and it's immoral to force these folks to do this. And Andy Stanley's saying that if you don't, as a Christian business, go participate in these, quote, gay weddings, that you're somehow violating Scripture. That's his insinuation.
Yeah, that it's sort of lacking in Christ's likeness to do this, because he says that, grab the exact quote.
He's offended by the idea that we would not participate in these things.
And he said serving people we don't see eye to eye with is the essence of Christianity. Well, I actually agree with that. I think he's right about that. But then the question is, in fact, sharing the gospel, that's what we do when we share the gospel, because
that's the essence.
By definition, by definition, here somebody doesn't see eye to eye with us on this. That's why we're sharing the gospel with them, trying to bring them to faith. But, the question I had, Tim, when you look at serving people who don't see eye to eye with you, is Jesus' interaction with the Pharisees.
Yeah, I would say you're right. They didn't see eye to eye. I think that qualifies.
And yet Christ served them because he served everybody, but what it meant to serve them was to tell them the truth and then not retreat or capitulate, no matter what kind of withering criticism he got in return.
Yeah, I don't know how Andy Stanley would answer that argument. In addition, Brian, what Andy's, and I don't know him personally, but just distinguish him, differentiate from Charles Stanley, his dad, when I'm calling him by their first name. Andy here, I don't know. I mean, he must be a smart guy. He's got a big church and been around Christian teaching for a long time. I would say he hasn't really thought through this, to give him the benefit of the doubt, because where his logic lands you is that pastors would be forced to marry homosexuals because to not do so would be unchristlike, because the pastor would therefore be not serving them.
Yeah, and I would take it, I agree with you there. I think essentially his definition of serving people who don't see eye to eye with you is doing whatever they want you to do.
That's what he's saying.
That's what he was saying.
And, so I don't, and I'm a bit surprised that Kirsten would go, Powers, who wrote this article, would go to him, Andy Stanley, a pastor in Georgia, to comment
on something in
Kansas.
But what concerns me too, Tim, is the fact that Andy Stanley is the pastor of the second largest church in the United States. So the implications go beyond just his church. This is now in USA Today.
That may have been why she quoted him, because he is has a national reach, I guess.
And so this word is going out now. USA Today, one of the most widely read newspapers in the land.
Exactly. And, we got a hard enough time fighting the secular liberals, in terms of the worldviews that we confront every day, and righteousness and unrighteousness, and constitutionality and unconstitutionality, and all the things we discuss here. And so it's very dismaying when we see somebody who you and I would probably going to line up with theologically, Brian, in terms of our Christian. I bet if you go to Andy Stanley's website on his church, I bet his doctrine of faith is sound, I would guess. But his dealing with the sin of homosexuality, he's just he's wrong about the law, number one, and number two, I don't know where he is on the whole issue itself. He seems to be ambiguous on the whole issue of Romans chapter 1, for example. That's my take, as I say, with all due respect.
Yeah. Well, and the question, and I don't want to talk about Andy Stanley because neither of us know him. I don't have a window of insight.
And we can only go on the quotes that he gave.
Yeah, and we don't have a window of insight into his heart. God alone knows that. But talking in a general sense about human nature, why do you think, Tim, why would somebody who has these clear statements in Scripture about the nature of homosexuality, it's a sin in the eyes of God, homosexual marriage would be a counterfeit marriage according to the Scriptures, and it's clear, it's unambiguous in the Scriptures. So why would somebody who handles the Scriptures and is responsible to teach it, why would a guy waffle on an issue that's so straightforward? I want to hear your theory.
I have a theory on this. I think that the pro-homosexual crowd here, the liberal media and those who promote that agenda, and we're not talking about individual gay, lesbian folks, we're talking about the social political movement. I think they've so intimidated the general public, including the Christian leadership, some of the Christian leadership in this country, that they're intimidated, or they feel like they've got to be cool or hip, so they've got to sound like they're inclusive of all people, and that way you're not being, quote, judgmental. I call it the nicer than Jesus philosophy. Is what it amounts to. It's unscriptural, and I think that they need to reevaluate this approach. We don't have to be, to do anything but the problem we're having today is to do anything but total embracement of this lifestyle is to be a bigot or a homophobe. So
and I wonder the same thing. And maybe what motivates Christians who waffle on the issue of homosexuality is that they're concerned about their image, how they're going to be perceived,
Sure
what people are going to say about them. And they wind up wanting.
They don't want to be like Fisher and Wildmon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they wind up wanting all the wrong people to say nice things about them.
Right.
And in the process, they sacrifice the truth
That's
and
what I
principle
think.
along the way.
That's what I think's going on here, and I hope somebody can reach Brother Stanley and at least challenge him on some of this thinking that he has, because I think it's dangerous.
Well, I've got one other question to ask to you, Tim. He says last part of his quote, if you make a decision not to bake a cake for a gay wedding, it's your business, but leave Jesus out of it. I mean, in essence, he seems to be saying...
Well, he's double spoke there, too, if double spoke's a word. By that, I mean, he said that it's offensive if you don't do a gay wedding. But then on the other hand, he says, what did he say? It's your business. It's their business.
It's their business, but leave Jesus out of it. Yeah, so which is it?
Is it their business or not? So that's one aspect, but leave Jesus out of it. What he's saying here is, and I take offense to what he's saying for the Christian who says, no, I can't participate in a same-sex marriage with my business. What he's saying, what Andy Stanley is saying, is that that's offensive to him. Mm-hmm. For them to say something like that, it's just bizarre to me.
Well, and basically to take a position that Christians should not take Christ into the marketplace, into their business, shouldn't allow the Spirit of Christ. And
he's saying that by saying leave Jesus out of it, he's saying that those of us who refuse to participate in a same-sex marriage with our business would ourselves be violating Scripture.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
And Ed Vitagliano around here made this comment the other day. He just wonders if Andy Stanley would perform a gay wedding. I'm guessing probably not. But if he wouldn't perform a gay wedding, participate in one because of moral standards in the Scripture, then why is he condemning a baker for doing the same thing? Thank you, Tim. I guess Tim Wildmon, president of AFA, will be right back after this. Stay with us.